to Stan the Wine Man TV. I am your host, Stan Rattan, and this is the Blue Collar Wine Show, where I help you spend your wine dollars wisely. And today I have with me Owen Thayer. He is my sales rep for Cavatappi.
Right.
And this is kind of a cool idea I came up with. I'm going to show you guys what I do on a daily basis with wine sales reps who come to me and try to sell me on a wine, get me to buy it for the store. And so Owen's going to actually present wines to me. I want to give a little plug to Owen. He has a podcast. What's a podcast?
The podcast is called Just Enjoy the Movie. It has nothing to do with wine. My original love before I discovered wine was movies. So my friend and I, we watch flawed films, deconstruct the plot line, figure out how to improve it, and then put it back together into something better. So if you're tired of the modern superhero movies...
Sorry about that, guys.
And much like the movies, cell phones going off in the audience. Terrible distraction.
Yeah,
Come on, Stan. But yeah, check it out. Just enjoy the movie. It's an hour and a half of good fun. So perfect for a long drive.
All right. So what's the last movie you
I think the next episode we've got coming up is The Martian, the Matt Damon movie.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That was actually, I feel like, a good example of what we wanted to do. It's not about taking apart bad movies. It's more about movies that were pretty good or like fairly solid but could have been a little bit better. So that was a movie that I liked, but thought Matt Damon was a little bit obnoxious. So I thought there might be some ways to kind of improve that. So that'll be coming up next.
All right. Got it. All right. So Owen has brought a white, a rosé, and a red. So this is how he would present these wines to me, trying to get me to... Now Owen, just talk, do you approach every buyer differently? I mean, do you give that thought before you come in, or do you just grab samples and say, I can sell this to anybody?
It's kind of a combination, because you have to think in terms of, like, I only want to bring so many bottles out each week, so it's like I can't bring out a fresh set of samples for every individual buyer. So right. I try to take, but you need to pick things that are going to fit the buyers that you'll be seeing. So there's kind of this constant dynamic strategy involved of saying, like, okay, these are the wines that I want to take out. Who can I show them to? Who's going to respond well? Who are these going to work for? And then you kind of try to plot out your week so that you're visiting those buyers that it'll work with. So it's a little bit of both.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, do you consider me a difficult buyer?
No, you're not. You're pretty easy. You're pretty straightforward with things. Some buyers will kind of taste things and be like, oh, that's really great, and then never buy it. I feel like you know pretty well where you stand with things that you taste.
Okay.
And you're not necessarily afraid of anything weird. So I can show you a fairly broad range of products, but there's definitely things that I know not to show you. I mean, I think, some things that are maybe a little too, like, weird, like, far out there, maybe, like, I know that you being retail, that's its own little world, and you have your set of customers that you're catering to. I know that you talk a lot about how you were thinking about the terms of the wine in terms of the customers and who would be buying it. So, so there's some things that are, like, totally far out there that, like, I know aren't necessarily a good fit here, so I try not to bring too much of that. But I like to slip in a few weird things every once in a while, too, just to keep
I think I've surprised you before, though. Mm-hmm. So you brought out some Greek wines that I bought.
Yeah.
I don't think you were expecting me to buy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's what makes you a fun buyer, too, is because you are somebody that you don't have a specific thing that you like, I will only buy these kind of wines, like, that you can bring a good variety, which is great for planning my day, because then it means I can put together more or less any kind of sample list, and I know that it'll be worth showing it to you, whereas some buyers might only be buying Washington, and then that screws me over when I have a bunch of French wine in my bag. So,
yeah, I'm sure that does. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. You present these wines to me. What did you bring for me to try today?
Okay, so I brought 3 wines here today. They each kind of represent a different little bit of a wine challenge, but are also wines that I really enjoy. And so to start off, we have a Muscadet. This is a white wine from the Loire Valley, which is in northern France. And Muscadet is kind of fun. They're usually not super expensive, and in this case, this is like a $12 bottle of wine.
$12 retail?
Yeah, $12 retail. Okay. So, you're not asking that much of your customers to pick it up. It has this really classic label, because this producer goes back quite a ways. I think they're like on their 5th generation.
Pronounce that for me.
So this is the Pierre-Henri Gadet Muscadet Sauvignon, which Muscadet is itself sort of a style of wine that they make in the the town of Nantes, which
And
is
they use-
between the two rivers.
And this is 100% Melon.
Yeah, so the grape they use is called Melon de Bourgogne. Melon de Bourgogne is itself not a very interesting grape by itself. It's very clean and crisp and neutral. But so what the Muscadet producers do to kind of elevate that is they do extended aging on the lees or the dead yeast cells. So by letting this crisp, bright white wine age on those lees for 6 to 8 months, you pick up a little more richness. You get these nice citrusy kind of floral notes, although I shouldn't tell you what to taste. That was a lesson I learned early in my career, was like, don't tell the person
buyer.
tasting it what they're tasting.
Well, I actually don't mind that, because sometimes, and I've explained this to these guys before, is that sometimes you're trying to identify something, and if you're with people tasting wines, they'll nail it. And it's not power of suggestion, it's just you can't, sometimes your palate isn't working right to get that.
Well, I find a lot of times with wine tasting, it's all about making a connection. We all know what like raspberries taste like, for instance, but sometimes it's difficult to connect a red wine to that sense memory, and sometimes someone just saying raspberries kind of makes that connection. So that's one way I think about it.
Now, this is what I do. If he were, normally he's standing outside my office, I'm sitting in my office trying these wines. This has a great dusty rock nose on it, and I mean, it smells like dusty rocks and with a little bit of gasoline.
A little kind of like a petrol-y kind of note.
Yeah, a little bit. And then on the palate, it's really crisp and dry, like you said. There is a little bit of richness on the mid palate. I get a lot of citrus notes off of it.
Big time citrus. And this is sort of a more youthful style of Muscadet. So you're starting to see, as the category of Muscadet becomes a little more known, people are asking for it. They're not assuming that because it has mus in the name that it's a Moscato, which I think is the first original challenge of Muscadet.
Yeah, I never thought of that, because Muscadet was around and more popular before Moscato got it.
And I think they
MU versus MO.
Yeah. And I think I've found a lot of customers, they'll kind of come at it and they'll like ask me like, well, is this a sweet wine? Because they assume it has something to do with Moscato, and it's completely the opposite. But over time now, I feel like more people are aware of Muscadet, and especially like here on like an island community.
Yeah, the shellfish. Oh yeah,
exactly.
Now this is a great oyster wine, by the way. This would be fantastic, and it's a good price. You said $11.
Yeah.
So $10.99 in the store. It's a wine I would buy. In fact, it's a wine I would stack at the store, because it's got a good citrus, a little bit of minerality, and you know what? That just a touch of petrol. Nobody would really identify.
Yeah.
But I can feel it on the finish.
Yeah.
Which is really cool for wine geeky guys like us. We like that sort of thing. And the finish is really long. I can still get the finish. I get a little bit of apple and melon on the backside with the citrus. So, yes. So Owen brought a winner in the Muscadet. He'll probably sell some to me next week. So, yeah, that's one.
On the note of stacking it, too, I will say this does have a quantity discount. 3 cases knocks $1.50 off. So
there you go.
Get it even lower. So
this is a new thing that happened when the liquor law changes. They were able to give QDs or quantity discounts. They never used to be able to do that back in the day, but now you can, and of course we appreciate that as retailers, because then we can lower the price down even more. All right, cool. Let's move on.
All right, so next we have some French Rosé, and of course French Rosé has gotten very popular lately.
Right here.
There you go. So I think with rosé, I mean, that's another category where people have really kind of had to overcome a presumption that all pink wine is sweet, courtesy of our friend White Zinfandel.
Yeah. Which saved the wine world in the 70s.
Well, and especially the grape Zinfandel wouldn't exist without White Zinfandel. So I think we as wine snobs need to be careful not to dump on something like White Zinfandel too heavily, because it may be out of fashion now, and it may have kind of spoiled people's palates in terms of thinking that rosé was all sweet when that really wasn't true. But it did salvage that grape and really kind of kept the wine industry going in tough times.
Yeah, and it's a good, if somebody's just getting into wine and hopefully they graduate from White Zin at some point, but it is a good way to get into wine.
It's a little gateway wine. But so this is kind of about as opposite of White Zinfandel as you could get. This is a Bandol rosé made by a producer called Terra Brune. So Bandol is a subregion of Provence, and they're known especially for their Mourvedre-based wines and their rosés, which have a lot of depth and power and are very ageable. So these guys, Terra Brune, they're a relatively young producer in the region. They've been making wine there since I think the 80s, and they've kind of studied under Tempier, which is the really big, like epic wine of that region. So they're sort of disciples of them. The Tempier, Lucien at Tempier taught them to farm sustainably, and these guys are actually farming organically. They're using native yeasts. The blend is 50% Mourvèdre, 25 Cinsault, 25 Grenache. So it's a pretty classic Bandol blend there.
Yeah. One of my favorite components in rosé is Cinsault. I just think it's a...
And I think sometimes people I feel like Cinsault is the one that really stands out because you see Mourvèdres now and then, you see Grenache and a lot of things, but Cinsault, although I feel like you're seeing it more often in domestic, like Washington rosés.
It gives it a little bit more of a high tone on the palate, the Cinsault does.
Yeah. And I think that's something with blending in wine. I think with American wine being so focused on varietal labels, that we kind of think of blends almost as being like, oh, well, you're watering it down, or you're like kind of trying to cover it up. But really what a good blend is about taking characteristics from the different grapes and putting them in balance and harmony. And in this case, I think they're doing a good job. You get that power from the Mourvèdre, you get a little bit more weight and body from the Grenache, and then, like you said, that Cinsault gives it that lift. So this is a rosé that, you can age this for 5+ years. Really great with food. Now the challenge though is, of course, Bandol Rosé is usually on the higher end of the price spectrum.
Yes.
So this is about a $38 retail bottle.
Okay.
So that's kind of the challenge a little bit for you as a retailer. As I think people come in and they oftentimes expect a rosé to be cheaper.
Yeah.
But I feel like this kind of rosé, when you get someone to taste it, they can taste that difference.
Yeah, and we actually here on the San Juan Islands, a lot of people are looking for Bandol Rosé.
Oh, good.
Tempier is one I can't get very often, unfortunately. This is so much different than that. It's surprising that they actually school them a little bit, because Tempier can be really kind of almost have a jelly bean character to it. It gets almost sweet sometimes.
Well, what I found with Tempier too is as lauded and famous as that wine is, it's oftentimes you're better off not drinking it the year it comes out. Tempier doesn't really show its best character until you've had a year or two.
It dries out.
But I've had this side by side, and this I find is much more approachable young. It tastes good in the first year.
Well, the Tempier, seriously, the last one I tried, it was almost fruit forward. And this one is very bone dry. You get that strawberry component coming through, and the herb de Provence, which is something I really like about these rosés. They get kind of that herbal quality. They call it herb de Provence because they have all those herbs growing up in the hills. And a lot of these wines will pick that up in the flavor profile. So this is really dry, really clean. It actually is very young. I would say right now it's not showing itself the best. I think it does need to age a couple of years before it's really going to kind of come out. It feels a little tight to me. But, and that's funny, just so you know, rosé can age, especially these types of rosés. We don't need to think about popping and pouring. Maybe you buy a couple of Bandols, even though they're $38. Put them away and see what they do, because that's kind of fun. Yeah,
and I think that's sort of the next element of, like, people have gotten into rosé. Like you said, your people are interested in Bandol Rosé expanding out into like more interesting subregions. But the one thing that I think people still grapple with is the idea that if you don't drink the rosé the year you bought it, it's automatically trash. And so then retailers, we have a lot of trouble if we as a supplier end up with last year's rosé in stock the following year. It can be really hard to sell it off because people are afraid to put it on the shelf, because then their customers might look at it and be like, oh, that's bad. But I think depending on the rosé, sometimes it's even better if it has a little bit.
And I bought quite a few Provence rosés that are a year or two older. And I tell my customers, don't be afraid of it. It actually might be a little bit better than it was before. So unfortunately, for all my customers that might be watching this is out of stock. But the point about this is that if it were in stock, I'd probably buy 6 bottles for the store just so I could put it on the shelf. And I know I would sell it because people do like rosés from... That's what I like about my customer base, especially this time of year. You get a lot of people that understand these wines, and they buy them. I mean, my local people during the fall and winter are also very much rosé savvy. But it's cool when we get the influx of people from California, from Seattle, all those people coming up. They just clamor from the wines that I have that you can't find in the stores down there because they've already sold out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right.
So then lastly, I kind of said in the beginning I like to occasionally throw in kind of a weird wine for Stan just to challenge him a little bit, and I thought you'd get a kick out of this. So this is the Zora Karasi. This is an Armenian red wine.
Wow.
So this wine is made by from a grape called Areni Noir, which is a native grape to Armenia. The vineyards are very, very high elevation, 4,500 feet up. The wine is fermented in cement and amphora. And these are actually their own roots. They're not grafted, so most wine grapes out there have to be grafted onto American rootstocks, even though they're French grapes, to protect them from phylloxera. In this case, I think it's the elevation and the sandy limestone soil means they can keep them on their own roots. And this wine, another cool little detail of this was where they got the cuttings to plant the vineyard. They actually found them. It was an abandoned monastery, and these vines were just growing wild. Cool. And so they took cuttings of them and then propagated them in their new vineyard. Yeah, and so it's a pretty cool little wine.
This has like the bouquet on this is so powerful, it just about knocked the glass out of my hand. It has a very kind of Gamay on steroids sort of nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has an aromatic quality to it, which I love. I really like aromatic
So
reds.
you get raspberry and coffee bean. I think the raspberry is prominent.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of cranberry too. So you get this raspberry cranberry coffee thing going on, which is really cool. What's the price on this one?
Now, so this is retail about $33.
Okay.
So, you know, I know for kind of thinking about your world as a retailer, something like this where it's Armenian, you probably don't have a lot of people looking for Armenian wines. But if you have people that are looking for something a little bit different, I think this is a really great example. This is generally considered to be one of the top wines out of Armenia right now.
Yeah, a little chocolate on the nose too, which a lot of people are going to, as it's opening up in the glass. You get that chocolate? Chocolate, cranberry, raspberry.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the chocolate, actually, you're right. It is really prominent.
Yeah, it's really starting to come out.
Like almost like kind of like a raspberry chocolate like torte kind of thing.
A little bit of cranberry splashed in there. Yeah.
And I think what's cool about this wine is it is from an interesting region. It's from a grape that you have never heard of and will never see anywhere else. It has a lot of like nerd points. But I feel like on the palate, it isn't particularly challenging in the sense that it's not like very unusual. Like it drinks like a good red, but it definitely has its unique character as well.
It's very Gamay-like, and Gamay, you know, I mean Lapierre and those guys in Beaujolais. Mm-hmm. It's very Beaujolais-like.
Yeah, like a Morgon.
Yeah, but it has this like acidic edge to it, like not over the top acid. That's one of the guys I know. Owen knows that. That's one wine he can't sell to me at the stores if it's too high in acid.
Yeah.
Because I can't sell those to the customer. Mm-hmm. Now I do have some customers that are acid freaks, of course, and they like that sort of thing, and I might buy a couple of bottles for them. But usually those guys that like the acid wines don't want to spend any money.
Yeah.
Either.
Interesting.
What's cool about this wine is that it's got high acid, but it's so well integrated that you don't feel like you have acid. You know, it doesn't pucker up, you know, get you right back here sort of thing. And that coffee bean really comes through big time.
Yeah. And I think balance is a big part of wine, and that's something for me as I've learned more and more about wine and tasted more wine. I realize that you know, I think when you start out, you look for these really big, prominent flavor notes that you can identify, like new oak, like the spice, or like big fruit, things like that. And as you kind of get more and more into wine, you realize that what it comes down to is having this nice balance of fruit, but structure, like nice tannins and acidity, but nothing that's like really jumping out ahead of everything else.
Right.
Like, hopefully a good wine will be like a nice little arc and kind of like sit with you, and so that's always kind of what I look for. People ask me what my favorite wine is, and for me it's those wines that have that balance and that are so uniquely balanced that I remember them, that they kind of etch themselves in my brain. Yeah. So it's like if I can remember a wine that I had a year after, that's a good sign that I really like that wine.
Yes, exactly. So that would be it. Now, would I buy this for the store? Probably not, only because it's $30 retail, you said?
Yeah.
I'd have to have the right customer come at the right time. I think it's a great wine. I do have that kind of what I call my unusual wine section. It just, you got to write. This is one of those wines where you have to find the right person at the right time that is able to describe to me what they're looking for in a wine. This is very Gamay-like with a lot of coffee bean. It's different than a Gamay, but at the same time, it's got more of an edge to it. This wine will age easily, I would say 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
and I'd love to taste it 10 years from now. So I might just buy a bottle for myself, take it home, stick it in the cellar, which is right over here, and see what it does. That's always a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely makes a fun impression at a dinner party too, when they're expecting you to bring out a cab and then you show up with some Iranian Noir and they're like, what the heck? And they never forget that night.
So Owen's leaving me, which really kind of makes me angry because he's, I like having Owen come and stop by and see me, but somebody's going to take his spot. That happens a lot in our little wine world. Yeah. So anyway, Owen, but I wanted him to be on my episode. He's the first one I did an interview with, and your first one. Good job.
Pleasure. Thank you.
In the man cave. So you keep watching, and I'll keep helping you spend your wine dollars.